Welcome back to the Intuition Incubator. Today, I have with me Aleya Dow, an alternative healer for over 30 years. Aleya is a sound healer, energetic practitioner, former acupuncturist, and doctor of Oriental medicine. In 2001, Aleya had an enlightenment experience enabling her to perceive other realms, hear angelic beings, and increase her empathic and clairvoyant abilities to help people release the root causes of their suffering. Her tools, proprietary cups of consciousness meditations, and 9 sound healing albums help people worldwide move forward with grace, peace, empowerment, and freedom. Welcome, Aleya.
Thank you, Abby. So great to be here.
Yeah, did I have that right? That were you an acupuncturist, a former acupuncturist?
Yes, and I still dabble in it a little bit, but I'm not licensed in California, which is where I currently live. But I'm still licensed in Colorado.
Oh, got
Yeah,
it. Okay.
yeah,
All right. Well, I'm so happy to have you with us. I just was on your incredible podcast, Cups of Consciousness.
that was so fun.
It was great. And we just had such a wonderful, I don't know, the energy was just so awesome. So I'm excited to have you here. And, the first question that I know I'm dying to hear, and I'm sure everybody else is too, is what was this experience? Like, what happened?
Yeah, so it was. Literally, my consciousness shifted in less than 30 seconds, and we call that an enlightenment experience. But I perceive that actually everybody has teeny tiny mini enlightenment moments every day, but it's the journey of becoming aware of those mini moments and then we build on it. But when you have, a 20-second, 30-second experience that completely shifts your reality and memories from previous incarnations, memories of training prior to the launch, and the ability to perceive multiple dimensions, beings, energies, consciousness, and other dimensions, be able to hear people's thoughts, feel their feelings, know why they're doing what they're doing and what they're really after, just using an uncomfortable mechanism typically, was very overwhelming. But at the same time, training helped that high level of awareness that came on in 30 seconds. And it was April 24th, 2001, and I was lying on a sound table, which is essentially a massage table filled with water with huge speakers. And I was listening to there's a woman named Miriam McLaughlin, and it was a song called Bring the Peace, and it had flutes and drums and vocal. And there was this like shooting through a tunnel and coming onto the planet and actually swooping in over Stonehenge. And so I saw Stonehenge, and then um, I was like, oh my God, a huge shift in my awareness. And then continued laying on the sound table for another 20 minutes, 30 minutes, integrating, and then got up off the table. And I was like, wow, I feel really different. And so it actually took me 3 to 5 years or 20, depending on the
Wow.
day, to integrate high levels of sensitivity. And I think the journey with an enlightenment experience where your consciousness does shift in a really radical way, it's how do we integrate it? How do we build on it? How do we not lose it? And a lot of times people will do plant medicine and they'll have this profound experience, but then it drifts away. Or they will have an enlightenment experience and it drifts away. And the difference with my experience was after that enlightenment experience, it kept building.
Mm.
Every day, the level of sensitivity, the awareness, oh, this is the concept to hold, this is the energetic stance to hold, it just built more and more and more. And so, um, and then eventually the passion of teaching others, guiding others. And I already had a private practice where I was doing acupuncture in Telluride, Colorado. And so people came in and they're like, wow, you feel really different. And I was like, I do feel really different. And my healing started, my work with people started to shift and reflect the work that I was doing with my own self.
And so this was essentially during a meditation on a sound.
Yes, I had a practitioner who was overseeing the session, and he had felt into different songs that I listened to over the course of 45 minutes. And you can't really control an enlightenment experience. You can't command and demand it, wave your magic wand and be like, poof, I would like to have a different perception. It happens mystically, magically, and usually when we're most ready for it, even though our conscious mind might not know that we're ready for it.
Yeah. And for those people, because I do have, my audience is a little bit of varied, like those people that, this feels very foreign to. What do you mean by a shift in consciousness?
It is how you perceive yourself. And when you shift how you perceive yourself, you shift how you perceive everyone and everything in your life. And when I think about enlightenment or a shift in consciousness, it's the journey of increasing our perception of our essence, the light that flows within us, our divine spark, the stardust within, as you would say. And so when you bring your awareness deeper into what I call the divine line, it's a river of light that flows within us, and we perceive from that place, then we're perceiving from a greater state of connection. And we're then able to perceive other people's essence. It's that namaste, I see my essence. I therefore have the ability to see yours and honor yours the way I honor mine. And so, whenever we're on the journey of growth, regardless of the path that we take, it could be Buddhism, it could be yoga, it could be breath work, it could be fasting, it could be plant medicine, it could be mantras or energy work, working with your energetic fields. They all take you to the same place, which is greater perception of your divine connection.
Yeah. And so when I hear that, I sort of think about a couple of things. I mean, one is that those perception shifts that are sort of, I guess we might say, grounded in the 3D, where there are moments that if we're lucky, we might get that experience of, you're going about your life, you have these ideas of this is not possible, that's not possible, whether it's you're wanting to start a new business or you want to, get married or you want to whatever, and you're just hitting, all of these roadblocks. And then you have that moment where somehow you get out of your own way and something happens and you realize, oh, this is all available to me. Like you just see it, and I've had that happen a few times, like, well, we're maybe for years and years, I would be in fear about, what I want to do with myself professionally or whatever. Is, oh, but I can't because, I don't have that and I don't have this or this person has that. And then all of a sudden one day, however many years later, it's like, oh, wait a minute, I'm the only person in my way. Like that.
Right.
Right,
Right.
like, that's a shift in perception, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's an elevation of
Absolutely.
consciousness,
Yeah.
but you're also talking about the ability to hear angels, to see beings, which is like a whole 'nother level
Mm-hmm.
of consciousness, sort of the multisensory being,
Right.
as opposed to the five sensory being, the people that, were just are hearing, seeing, touching, tasting,
Yep.
feeling, that those are the only senses that we're taking in from. You're talking about multi senses, right?
Multi senses. And that piece that you talk about with intuition, we want to explore the idea that we have our physical eyes that enable me to see you through a web camera and to see the walls and to see the sky and the plants, the trees. But we also have energetic eyes or intuitive eyes. We have our ability to touch and feel physically, but we also have our intuitive ability to touch and feel. Same with a knowing. We have the mental knowing, but we also have this intuitive clairgnosis. And so, if you think about your five senses, start exploring the idea that you also have energetic senses on top of that. And then that starts giving you the ability to be a conscious, multidimensional being where we are actually all conscious, multidimensional beings. Because if you close your eyes and you just imagine being in a river, what does that feel like? What does that look like? What does that sound like? You might not be able to visualize it. Some people can't visualize it at all, but where do you pick up that sense? You're just tapping into another dimension where there's an energetic river and you're using those resources in that other dimension to soothe you, to calm you, to clean you. And that starts to ripple and reflect here because I wrote a book called Seven Cups of Consciousness, and it's basically like these seven concepts. And the first concept is we do live in a multidimensional reality, and everything that shows up in the physical dimension is actually a reflection of all of these other dimensions. So when we have a profound dream that's filled with incredible peace, that shadows us in the day. So we're tapping always into other dimensions with our imagination, our intent, our dream time, our fantasies, and we are creating a vibrational experience that ripples into our consciousness, our mental body, and our emotional body, and our cells.
And so only some people though are able to really be able to see or hear those angels, those whatever. I mean everybody could, right?
Everybody could.
Any of
Everybody
us
has that
can.
capacity. Yeah.
Right.
The question is, do they want to?
Mm. Huh.
And I'm all about the how, right? It's like if you can't tell me how to do it in 30 seconds or less, I'm going to find out how to do it, right? Because it's like if it doesn't work and I can't feel it or perceive it, what's the point? And so for me, I've spent years figuring out how do we bring our awareness into a multidimensional reality where you can perceive your guides, your angels, people perhaps who have passed over that you really miss, that you want to connect with. And the very first step is actually using the 3D physical breath to pull yourself into an inner river of light with your imagination, your intent, your energetic field, to use your exhale to ground and anchor into that inner river. Just that one step immediately starts tapping you into your energetic self, but in an empowered, controlled way.
Hmm. And so, just with that breath, and you're saying, breathe in and imagine a river of light inside yourself,
Mhm.
and then breathe out and ground yourself in that.
Into that inner river.
And
Mhm.
that is the first step of being able to perceive these people that have crossed and all
Yeah.
of these things.
Yeah. Because if you're not in your inner river of light, your divine line, your divine space, whatever you want to call it. I call it the divine line that actually for the soul rides on the front of the spine. And then we have a divine line that runs through the spine, the spinal cord that belongs to the body. Because when I had that enlightenment experience, I had a very clear perception of this body that I'm riding in. It is
Mhm.
of earth, and it has a very different consciousness than the consciousness that me, etheric being, holds. And so when we start identifying that we're this river of light, divine line, front of spine, we pull ourselves into that energetic safe space. We've just increased our perception of connection and our actual connection with our essence. So now we have the ability to connect with the essence of a guide or the essence of a loved one on the other side, or the essence of a spirit of a flower.
So how do you pull that guide in? How do you know it's a guide?
Yeah. So, step one, deep breath in, pull yourself into your divine line. Exhale, ground and anchor into that inner river. That moves you into a safe space. And then you could just basically say, guides, angels of love and light. I always put in the love and light because there are lots of beings who are holding lots of different perceptions of connection. And from my perspective, I would like those that are conscious of their light.
Right.
Everyone has light, but the variable is, are they conscious of it and are they embracing it? So, guides, team, beings of love and light, encircle me and increase your own connection with your own light as you encircle me. More, more, more. New favorite word. More, 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 more. And then what you're doing is you're using your perception here in the physical dimension to witness, imagine these beings of love and light increasing their perception with their essence. You're witnessing them into a more awakened state, which then amplifies their energy. Now you start getting positively empathically impacted by these beings in other dimensions, and they actually start moving you into an even more connected state, but in an empowered way. They're not doing anything to you. You're just getting positively empathically impacted, just like if you were encircled by people that were laughing. They were laughing so hard, you probably start laughing and eventually pee in your pants because you're laughing so hard because you're getting positively empathically impacted. So, yes, you could have them laughing, or you could have them increasing their perception, their connection with their light, with their essence, with their gifts, with their wisdom, with their mastery. And then you start to feel a very subtle shift and feel a little more supported, a little more relaxed. You might even take a breath or yawn, and that's the reset of the central nervous system for a different vibrational way of being.
And so is this something that are these the meditations? Is that part of the meditate some of the meditations that you've created?
Yeah, the daily cups of consciousness, I started recording those in 2009. And I think I have over like 3,000 meditations online now. And they're a little more, they're advanced energetic protocols where We could call them a prayer, but I call them a protocol just because of people's experiences with religion, not always positive. And it's essentially a seven-step process where you invite your higher self, your energetic fields to dot, 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 do something, release something, bring something in. And I'm being very specific that we're asking our energy fields to do it. We're using our verbal mental body to formulate the request, but then we let go and we let our energetic self do this work in this other dimension. And then we start to feel the ripple and the reflection here in the physical terrain.
And I imagine that is not necessarily the way that we thought we would find it. It doesn't
No.
come the way we ordered it, maybe.
Exactly. Yeah. And you're like, wow, that's better than I could have ever have imagined. Or, oh, I need more support. Okay, what else could I use my position here in the physical dimension to make a request for an energy to shift in another dimension that impacts me? A lot of the times we're carrying, I think 80% of, from my perspective, 80% of our challenges are empathic. Ancestral, we pick them up in the womb. They're programming. We're taking responsibility for fixing somebody. As soon as we take responsibility for fixing someone, we then empathically feel all of their challenges and also their karma.
Mhm.
So, when we start cleaning up our fields and holding our fields in a really coherent, connected way that's in alignment with our essence, the challenges start to just fall away. And it feels miraculous, but it's not if we explore the idea that we're all empathic, except for people who are sociopathic, which is a very small number of people on the planet, fortunately. Um, but we're all empathic when our brains are healthy, our energy fields are healthy, and we have the ability to use our empathic sensitivity to release and also receive supportive ways of being.
One of the things that I think you just said that's super important that I always kind of like to highlight is that you packed so much into, into that. You pack so
Oh,
much into all of your answers. Like I asked one little question, you're like, all right, let me
yeah,
unpack that.
PhD course,
Right,
1.5 minutes.
exactly. Um, but one of the things you said is that we're taking on someone else's issues that could be from a whole nother lifetime, a whole nother ancestral pattern or whatnot. And I think that's a really important part to highlight just because we tend to personalize everything that happens to us here
Oh,
on this
totally.
earth, you
Totally.
know?
And
And that,
empathic feels so like your own.
yeah, it does.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
why is this happening to me? Or I keep having this repetitive behavior that I can't stop.
Yeah.
And then we beat ourselves up. And I mean, there's so much ripple effect from that.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so much self-flagellation that comes from that and
Mhm.
everything, and so the release, I think, that can be felt when it's like, this whatever it is you're carrying may not even be yours.
Right. Right. So I'm just like intuitively asking, okay, like if we were just to do one little thing that's big around the empathic is to play with the idea that when we came here into this world and into our society, whatever society we were born into, there's this unconscious, unwritten, um, you are responsible for loving me. So the child, baby, takes responsibility for loving parent. So the moment we take responsibility for loving someone, we then that responsibility bundle comes with all of the ways in which they feel empathic. Again, with their karma, their behaviors, their thought forms, their emotions, because it's all vibration. And so if we wanted to just play with this one practice, let's just explore the idea like, how many bundles of responsibility am I holding for loving other people? And just take a minute, all of you, like, how many bundles are you holding of responsible for loving other people? And yes, you're going to love people, but not from a place of responsibility. And just imagine having a little tennis ball machine or a huck and chuck machine, and you just start chucking all these little bundles, inviting your energy fields to just chuck all these little bundles for responsibility for loving people back to them where they have the capacity to hold it, which is incredibly empowering. So you just keep chucking all these little bundles with your imagination station, and you're returning empathic sensations too. And then you might start to feel a lightening in the field. The fear, the shame, the low self worth starts to lighten as you return these responsibilities. along with appropriate information and empathic sensations. So, just that one simple practice of intending that your energy fields are doing that work. You're using the mind to make the request, but then you let the energy fields do the work. Then we stop getting negatively empathically impacted by the shame of 3 generations back, 1 generation back, the mother, the father. I've seen things go back 22 generations, more like thousands of years. And so, lighten our fields and then feel how we have the capacity to take responsibility for just loving the light that flows within us. I can do that. Just my light, not my behavior, not my beliefs, not my accomplishments, not my goals, not my dreams. No, not my intelligence. No, just my light. Just love my light. And then you're in that mantra of, I'm just going to love my light. And we start to cultivate more self love, self worth. And then we have the ability to start looking at the shadows, the behavior with more courage, less defensiveness,
Uh-huh.
and more resilience and less ego.
Which is huge, right?
Yeah.
Because that is, and it really, it goes to the issue of fear, which I talk about a lot on this podcast as well, because fear is such a thing that keeps us from our intuition and from our divine light. And I think what you're speaking to is when we're really caught up in our ego, and I don't mean that as like, oh, I'm so great, but our ego, like our defense mechanisms that we came upon honestly because we were given all of these bundles that said you have to be this and you have to all of these things, and we've tried to protect ourselves, and then we kind of develop these behavior traits or these personality traits that we don't love. Maybe other people don't love them either, but
Mm-hmm.
they're part
Mm-hmm.
of our human personality, you
Mm-hmm.
know that we don't it's scary to admit to those. It's scary to let go of those. It's very vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
So I
It
think what you're
is.
speaking to is, really like filling up with light first.
Yeah.
Because when you have that perspective that you are so much more than we ever really could ever imagine or think. All of those little pesky little things that we quote hate about ourselves or whatever. It's like, oh, that is so
Yeah,
not a big
that's
deal.
like,
Like,
"Oh, that's entertaining. Look how I'm in a perception of dilution and distortion with my light."
look, my light just went out. Yeah, yeah. So how do you know it was 22 generations back?
Um, I saw it, felt it, heard it, had a resonance a lot of the times when I'm working with people and they're like, "So I have this behavior that I'm in and I really don't like it." I'll say, "Okay, well, let me take a look and see where that's coming from." And then in the woo woo world, I close my eyes and I start scanning and checking and traveling and follow the thread. It's like my greatest passion and joy is following the thread and hunting for where did this start? Because
Yeah.
if you can get the origin point, whether it's theirs or empathic, if you can find the root, then you can tend the root. But if you can never find the base root of where it's coming from, it just keeps repatterning. Just like in energy work, people are really focused on clearing cords. And I'm not saying that clearing cords is good or bad, but I've had for years, I spent like 5 years, I spent clearing cords. And every time I cleared a cord, like 2 weeks later, they'd show up. They'd come back 3 months later. I'm like, ugh. And it got boring after a while. And so instead of cutting cords, I just start following the cords to find where the root is coming from of that vibrational experience. And then usually when I find it, I'll get like a weepy tingles, body tingles. There's like a resonant field of you just hit the mother lode. And then I walk them through a process of helping them shift that vibration that's impacting them. And then the consciousness, the behavior shift within 20 to 30 seconds,
Wow.
which is disorienting. That's the little sort of like good part, bad part of the work. Cause it's like, whoa, I feel different than I didn't do anything other than something with my fields.
Right. And you
Mm.
do this virtually.
Yeah. Yep. Zoom. But I was just thinking this morning, I was like, oh, back in the day when we didn't have Zoom and I just had my eyes closed all day long on the phone. Um, it it's a little easier because you're not getting distracted by the visual, and we sometimes go deeper when we don't have the visual. And so with a lot of my clients, they end up working, they're like, they've done a Zoom and then like, can I just do phone? I'm like, yes, that's great. And so, and also sometimes people don't like seeing themselves on camera because it distracts them and they've gotten their
Right.
judgments, which actually can be useful for clearing stuff. And then I can see how they start to move into more self love, and the self hatred just starts dialing it down through a session.
Now, you just mentioned self hatred. Speak about that for a moment. How much of an epidemic is that in our
Oh,
world right now?
it's the greatest challenge on planet Earth. It's the only challenge on planet Earth. If everyone had self-love, we would have a very different world, very different environment, very different culture. But what starts that off? Oh, I'm responsible for loving everyone in my life. And now let me give responsibility to everybody for loving me. Ultimate disempowerment. And also too, if we perceive a higher power, like in the 30 years of me doing this work, I've been exposed to a lot of people who are spiritual and woo woo. And I don't mean that from a place of disrespect, but there's a statement that I'll hear in that community of, well, the universe will provide.
Mm.
And I'm like, okay, or that God will provide, or Allah will provide, or Buddha will, grant me. And it's like, okay, but now that means you're giving your power for manifesting away. And you're thinking that whatever comes to you is a result of an outer energy, instead of being in absolute gratitude for this light and recognizing that anything that supports you in your outer world is a reflection of how you're supported by the light that flows within, and really specifically a quality that flows inside. We all have a positive quality. It's like if I put my hand on my heart, I have kindness in my heart and I have peace in my heart and I value that. Oh, and now I'm in self love. We all have the ability to do it, but we didn't learn in kindergarten, love my light. And imagine we all have a 5-year old and we come home and the 5-year old says, I am responsible for loving the light that flows within me, nothing else. And you're
Right.
like,
Like
yay,
vitality. Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
the passion and the joy. And you don't need to love me, mom. I love me.
Yeah. Yeah. That whole
Wow.
thing of being taught to have a relationship with self. Right. And, the other thing about it making it external, of course, is that then when there's all these unconscious things that are happening behind the scenes, right, where your lack of belief or your fear or all of those things are blocking something from happening, and then there's first the universe will provide. Well, there's an expectation that it's going to provide because I'm a quote good person, but there's
Right.
all of these things messing up in the subconscious, all of these
Block,
contracts or whatnot that
blocking.
are happening.
Yeah.
And so then when that doesn't happen, you're just disillusioned
Hmm.
and victimized,
Hmm.
and your light is getting harder and harder to see and to touch and to feel, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And more shame and then more blocking. Because when we have the shame, then we close our ability to receive.
Yeah. I have said that before. I really believe that, I was on a podcast not that long ago, and we were talking about worthiness, and she asked me, how many people do you think have an unworthiness issue? I said 100%. Yeah, 100, like that is it. That
Yeah.
that that is it.
Yeah.
And
Or
it's
99.9. Like,
yeah, right.
there
And
might be like 0.1% who've cultivated self love.
right. Or who were lucky enough. Yeah.
Whales, the whales.
The whale. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's hard for a lot of people to see the
Hmm.
places where they're self-loathing or feeling
Hmm.
unworthy. It's really, really hard,
Hmm.
especially if they're successful out in the world, or they're, kicking ass and taking names, or they have, externally, good relationships and all those kinds of things. All of that, the things that they may be saying to themselves in their head, or the energy fields around them, or the how hard they are on themselves or whatever, instead of instead of seeing that as like, oh, this is a program that I started running a long time ago that I picked up
Mhm.
through a pathway or something like that. But instead, it's like a belief, right? It's a belief like, no, 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 I did screw that up. And I do need to, like, the way to fix this is to beat myself up over it and to be, like the thought becomes just a belief.
Right. Well, it's interesting as you're talking about that, it makes me think about people who are really successful in the world and they still have the self critic, the self hatred. And sometimes when I'm working with somebody, I'll say to them, okay, so you're doing the self flagellation. And can you feel how you're basically getting pummeled to be humbled? So you have a level of mastery, but you want to move to a higher level of mastery, but you don't want to move to that higher level of mastery until you've attained humility with your mastery so you don't go into full throttle arrogance that's really long, gnarly track. And you're using the self critic or the low self worth or the self hatred or this shameful behavior or thought form to try to cultivate humility with your mastery that you do have. And then you'll allow yourself to move to a higher level of mastery. And I pondered this actually for several years and realized that when we're in gratitude for just like that kind heart or integrity or strength or courage or curiosity, when we cultivate more self love and we're in gratitude for that, gratitude is a much more efficient mechanism to cultivate humility instead of using the pummel to be humbled. So, again, we don't shift until, and we don't awaken and we don't embrace change until we've cultivated a certain amount of self love. And then once we have attained a certain level, then it's full throttle, brakes are off.
Yeah. And I mean, it makes such perfect sense if you think about like what child learns from being criticized.
None,
It
none.
just doesn't happen.
Right,
Right. And
right.
essentially, we're all like these little children inside ourselves. Right. But how do you help someone who is really sort of really plugged into the 3D and really like sort of like, no, like, well, what does that mean? I'm just supposed to sit around all day and love myself? Like, I won't get anything done. I
No,
don't want to.
just 20 seconds, 2 minutes tops. Then you have to spend the rest of the day integrating that experience that you had for 20 seconds just with your imagination station, your energetic fields. And you don't control your energy fields with your mind. You use your mind to just be like, I'm just going to invite my energy fields to activate a stronger current of kindness in my core. I'm just going to love that up. Okay, you're done. Check. Now integrate that the rest of the day and then do it again tomorrow morning. Just that very simple practice in it. And it is like you do drop in, you are in a place of stillness for 20 seconds, 2 minutes. Then, if people do like meditating and they like sitting in meditation for 5 minutes or 20 minutes or an hour, okay, just meditate on that stream of kindness or peace or curiosity that flows within you vertically and embrace that and value that and ponder how long did it take you to attain this and what are all of the layers there. Go dive deeper into it. That's self exploration, but from a really positive vein where we're not focusing on I got to clear this block, I got to clear that block, I got to clear that block, because that too can get tiresome after a time.
Right. That's the whole intellectualization of the process, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
okay, now I've got to feel light. I'm feeling light. Here's light. I'm looking for light. So how do you, I assume your meditations and maybe your soundtracks like help people move out of that rapid thinking place because it's
Yes.
very different. You can't think yourself
No, you
into
can't
this
think yourself
place.
into a different state.
No.
No. It's more like a gerbil wheel, right? Just get on the gerbil wheel and nothing changes. You don't go anywhere. And so I think one of the greatest challenges of the work is boom, your consciousness shifts in 20 seconds or less, and it can be disorienting. But the other part that's disorienting is I do these things called the tall cups of consciousness. And it's basically like an energy balancing energetic protocols for 45 minutes or an hour every 3 weeks. And I would say that the majority of the people, 80 to 90% of the people that do the tall cups, they come into the session. We call them the ascended masters, their guides, their higher selves to do their vertical hookup, and boom, they're
Yeah.
out. They're out for 40 minutes, 45 minutes. They completely and totally fall asleep. And, I'm not watching them on video. They've just given me this feedback of like, yeah, you started the talk ups and boom, I was out and then you wrapped up and I woke up again, but feeling different. And so um when we do that, when we just kind of fall asleep, when we start to go into protocol, it's you're rediverting a lot of your energy and awareness into your energetic fields and off of the mental body and off the emotional body and even the physical body a bit. And your energy fields are then doing the work. And then once the energy work is complete, then you redivert your energy and you come back into awareness. And when I first started doing these energetic protocols, my guides and just knowing, I had like all these steps. And so I'd start with a protocol and I'd say the protocol and then I would fall asleep for a minute, 2 minutes. And I assume helping their energy fields, me doing it, modeling it. And then as soon as they had the energetic shift, I would then wake up again. And fortunately, they were on the table with their eyes closed. So they didn't know I was falling asleep every time I did a protocol.
Right.
But, so that can be a little disorienting and probably why, the circle is pretty small because people aren't conscious of what they're doing because they're still working the strength of the energy fields. And after several years of doing energetic protocols, then you stop falling asleep. It took me about 3 years to stop falling asleep. And, but it's taken some people, 5 years, 7 years. Some people still fall asleep after doing it for 15 years with me. And so we just want to hold space that that's okay. Your energy fields are kicking in and they are doing the work and they're far wiser than the mind.
Have you had people who have not been you've not been able to penetrate because they're just too
Absolutely.
yeah, and how do
Absolutely.
you
Yeah.
interpret that?
Some people are just not, it's like, not appropriate. Be like, do you like Mexican food? I love it. Okay. Then Lay's going to be your cup of tea. Do you like Mexican? No, I hate it. Right. So then everybody has a different vibration and a different way of presenting tools. And some people really resonate with it. And if they resonate with it, it's like, oh, that's the music that I really like and align with. And then other people don't align with this vibrational music that I embody and that I present.
Yeah,
And so
but what
that's
if you have someone
mhm.
who really wants to access those realms? Have you ever had someone who's like, "Yeah, this sounds great. I'm all in,"
Like, I
and you're
want to
trying
work
to
with you,
work with
please, please,
them
please. Yeah.
and they can't break through to something. They
Instead of
can't.
just sending the feed to you, Abby. Like, here, Abby's going to be great for you. No. So, I mean, I will refer, but um, like I've worked with pilots and I did get my pilot's license. And so I've worked with pilots who have a very 3D and they have to have a 3D and they have to be grounded and to be in a conscious multidimensional state is not appropriate, especially if you're a pilot. And so what I do is I use the framework of okay, you're flying IFR. IFR is when you're only your instruments, you are in the clouds and you have no external orientation. When you are on IFR and you're in your cockpit and you have nothing external to reference, what are you checking? Oh, I'm checking my altitude. I'm checking my, you know, elevation, uh, oxygen levels, whatever it might be. I'm like, okay, so if you were to check inside yourself, what's your number one um, thing that you're going to reference to see if you're navigating appropriately? My heart rate. Okay. So let's be more aware of the heart rate. And could you imagine that when you're in your cockpit and you are flying even straight on course, compass heading, you're calm? Yeah. Okay, so let's create this inner compass heading. So you just use whatever framework they have and duplicate it here. Everybody's got a muscle that they are using to navigate life in a supportive way. How can we amplify that? Same thing with people who are in tech and they love writing code. It's like, okay, so you've got your hard drive, double click on your hard drive and open up the self love and activate the frequency, the application of kindness. Run that in your mainframe. Imagine what that would feel like. And so, wherever is the comfort zone of someone,
Mm,
use it to help them bring in a different way of being for themselves.
mm. And what do you w- what why do you think there's such a still, I mean, even though there is so much more acceptance, but why do you think there is still such a um such a denial of all of this stuff.
Witch trials.
The witch trials. I always thought that I was a witch burned at the stake. I really
Yeah.
do. I feel like
The
I'm
Crusades.
reincarnated.
The Crusades. How many years did we as women get persecuted in the Crusades and the witch trials? A long time. And so in our DNA, we have the memory of that. Whether we were a man persecuting or being persecuted, or a woman persecuting or being persecuted, we've probably all played both sides. And so there is a tremendous amount of trauma that
Mm,
ties in with the mystic, the herbalist, the one connected to earth and the winds and the ways of nature. And so, um, because of that trauma that's in the DNA, in the psyche, in the consciousness, we're all going to be hesitant to be like, oh, there's this blue spirit behind you and it's smiling and laughing. Okay, if I had said that, which I actually said yesterday to somebody, I was like, oh, there's this beautiful little blue sparky spirit above your head. And he's like, wow,
right.
if I had said that 200 years ago,
Yeah.
off
Off
with a
with your
head,
head.
stoned and drowned, right? Like, that's not that long ago.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. So there's fear. There's fear behind it, right? Like
Yeah.
fear is just
Fear
behind
fear
everything.
keeps you alive,
It keeps you alive. Yeah. We
but
we
it
have learned
also
it.
prevents you from thriving.
Right. It keeps you it's so funny, right? It keeps you alive, but it keeps you from your vitality.
Yeah. Your essence, your passion, your wisdom, your mastery. And unfortunately, in the US and certain portions of the US, not everywhere in the US, um, there is a safety to expressing your passion and your intensity and your perspective. I mean, you and I couldn't have done this 50 years ago.
Right.
There's no way. And so our consciousness is shifting at an exponential rate. There's more light coming onto the planet. Our pineal glands, every single person on the planet, their pineal glands are getting impacted by the light coming from the sun that's amplifying. And it's creating a tipping point, turning point in the consciousness of the psyche of every person. And so the fact that we have the ability to have this type of conversation is a reflection of this shift in our consciousness.
Yeah, and you said this earlier on, and I was thinking about this because I have also a large Dr. Joe audience, and so many people are familiar with some of the experiences that you are sharing, but struggle to keep it going once they leave an event, once they go home, once they whatever. And you mentioned earlier on the whole thing about having this awareness, but then learning to cultivate it and keep it going.
Hmm. Hmm. So, in our world these days, a lot of people talk about microdosing. Okay, microdose one positive experience that you had in a meditation or in a retreat, and microdose it multiple times a day, and it only takes 2 seconds. Imagine yourself sitting in a temple on a higher floor, totally safe, clean, and clear. That doesn't take long to think about that image. And you're just like, yeah, I'm there. And I'm reflecting that stance, that peace, that calm, that clean, that clear to myself here as I move in the day. Okay, so think about that. Just tiny little snippet. You might even say, like, sacred space 5 times a day. That starts to build in the fields and shift the vibration within you. And as your vibration shifts into a more harmonic state, it naturally reflects into your mental body, your emotional body, and the physical field.
Mm.
The other piece to sort of just quickly mention is sometimes we have a meditation or we have a really positive experience in a retreat and we tingle. The tingling in the body is actually your cells shifting and changing and moving into a higher frequency. Candace Pert wrote a book called Molecules of Emotion, and she did samples of cells and blood tests prior to energy work and after. And the chemistry in the cells were different after an energy session. It would not only took half an hour, 20 minutes, or 30 minutes, or 2 minutes. So our vibration impacts our cellular consciousness, our cellular tissue, our chemistry in the cells. Chemistry ties into the emotions too and the thought form. So just a tiny little micro enlightenment micro dose yourself every day.
And how do you I love that idea, it's just great, and it's not like it's so simple, yeah, like, go back to that moment and get back in that moment and just practice that, and from a scientific standpoint, you can just say, "And now you're creating neural networks for that moment," right?
Right.
Like, you're just beefing up your memory bank for that moment so that you're quicker to go back there instead of going the other direction. But what do you say for all the tingling and all of that stuff, but the physical ailment doesn't shift. Like the still the healing doesn't ever quite take place. You're feeling the feelings, you're seeing the things. Your pineal gland is like you're feeling it, but
But you still
nothing.
have the low back pain or you still have
Yeah, it's
the
not changing,
pathology.
or you still are
Um,
in lack or whatever.
more.
More.
There's the
You started by saying that more.
there's another layer. It's like we're an onion. And okay, you got one layer. Good. Keep hunting more. And anytime we run into a block or it's like, okay, well, I feel good, but I still have my low back pain or whatever it might be, or the fear or the belief system. Okay, how is it serving me? Oh, well, I feel safe. Okay. What if I activated and imagined a stronger current of safety waterfall inside me? More safety in my core, more safety in my core. People, more safety in your core, positively, empathically impact me. Okay. So now we've got the safety, and now we don't need to use the pathology or the body weight or the belief system or the behavior to experience safety. You just hucked an old tool and you brought in a way more efficient tool. So we don't want to judge the tool. We want to explore how can we level the tool up so that it's 1,000 times more efficient, powerful, and lovely.
But you still have to have a level of belief, right? Like you've got to
Not
have
really. Not really. I work with a lot of people who have partners, husbands, wives, and I say, okay, you're having this challenge with this person. All I need is their verbal consent. Like, go downstairs, be like, "Hey, I'm on the phone with Aleya. Do you, give me permission, or do you give her
right.
permission to work with her?" And if they say yes, then like, and it's an authentic yes, it's not like fine. Then that's a no.
Right.
But if it's a yeah, yeah, please, then I'll work with them. They don't hear anything of what I'm talking about because it's just not in their frame. And they then report to the partner, like, I don't know what she did, but I feel different and I no longer have this dot, dot, dot. They start to respond differently to their stimuli in their outer world. So you don't have to believe because we all have energy fields, and those energy fields, they evolve. They're in a constant state of evolution. And I just think of myself as like a coach or, your trainer in the gym. And I'm like, oh, look, your abs, they really need some work. Let's work those abs. And you're just working their energy. You're just helping them work their own energy fields as opposed to me doing anything to them. And it shifts their consciousness and their behavior.
Okay, so can I give you an example?
Mhm.
All right. So, for example, I think sometimes the people who don't have any belief like that actually can heal quicker, like it's easier for them. I'm talking about the person who like really understands all of it, can intellectually buy into it, but from a historical belief system, whatever it is, like can't wrap, just can't get as much as they want to, can't get beyond this core part that doesn't believe that this is real or that I can do this. You can do this, but I can't do this
Mhm.
type of a
That
thing.
that's a self-love thing. So then it would be like, okay, what's one positive quality you have inside yourself? What's one positive quality somebody would use to define you? Everybody has one.
Why do
If
you think
somebody,
it's self love though, instead of like just a disbelief that this hoo ha stuff is really real?
yes, but if they have self love, then that enables them to have more curiosity.
Mm, so
And if they
true.
have curiosity, now they're cracking the door to growth.
Yeah,
So
so
when you say,
true.
no, I don't believe, well, okay, so that means all of the doors for change are closed to you.
Hmm.
And so, how do we help somebody feel courageous enough to crack the door to curiosity of, well, is it possible that you exist beyond this little experience? What happens when you close your eyes? Do you disappear? No. Okay, where do you go? I don't know. Was it possible that you're holding your awareness now in a different dimension? Well, I just see black. Okay. So is it possible that that dimension is just you're perceiving it from a place of black because you're not seeing your light? I don't know. Okay.
Yeah.
But again, with that person that is like, no, I don't believe. I would just say, okay, well, how do you feel in your heart? Anxious and stressed. Okay. Do you want to feel differently in your heart, regardless of the outer changes or what people think of you? Yeah, because I'm really exhausted being in this stress and anxiety. Okay. What is an energy that you do feel inside you or want to feel inside you, like a river or waterfall, that could soothe you as you move in the day? What if we just started there? Um, so, there's lots of ways to start, but it's like the baby and or just using the breath too.
Yeah.
Everybody has a breath and we can use the breath to pull ourselves in.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned curiosity, and I love that you're tying that together with a worthiness issue um, and a love issue, self love issue, because it's so true. Like, there's so much certainty in our world right now. People are so
Yeah.
certain about whatever it is. And that's sort of how the left brain works, right?
Right.
It's a filing system, and it's
Right.
got a right and a wrong, and and
Especially in times of radical change.
yes, yes, and people are hugging their belief
Yeah.
systems,
Yeah.
which is fear-based,
Mhm.
but absolutely, like, you cannot have curiosity without having a level of love for yourself, because that's safety, right? That's the ultimate safety,
Yeah.
right, is loving yourself and having that light inside yourself, and then
Absolutely.
it's okay to be curious, it's okay,
Right.
everything's okay.
Right. And then you start holding your reference points for yourself more in connection with this positive quality within that is light, but we don't even have to perceive that it's light, just a quality. And then when we're holding our reference points for ourselves here, then our beliefs change. If we have all of our reference points for our identity on our beliefs, then it's terrifying if the beliefs change. But as we evolve and as we awaken and as we shift our consciousness, our beliefs are naturally going to change. And so we don't want to be attached to our beliefs. Like right now, I'm carrying a vibration and that vibration's creating my beliefs. But now I'm going to crank up my vibration into more harmonic frequencies. Okay, that's going to naturally now shift my beliefs. So we never want to get attached to the blue sweater,
Yeah. I
right?
love that. I've had that experience so many times that I
Yeah,
stopped being sure about anything.
yeah. Like
Right?
right now, this is how I'm perceiving, and tomorrow
Yeah.
it'll be different.
It's probably
And
different.
it's not right or wrong.
And it's okay, right? It's
Yeah.
okay. It doesn't, we can be flexible.
Yeah, it's like we're on a mountain, and today I'm at a certain altitude and I've got a view, and tomorrow I'm going to be at a different altitude looking in a different direction. That's a different view.
Yeah. Oh my
Mhm.
gosh. I could have this conversation forever. Um,
You're so fun, Abby, truly.
well, thank you for being here. This was just awesome. And I just want you to share with the audience, like, where they can find you. I know you have a thriving following. Lots of people are engaging in this. So if my audience, anybody in my eyes is saying, "Is this real? Believe me, this is real." So it's more real than probably what we think is real. I mean, it is more real
Mhm.
than what we think is real. I don't know what to say, probably.
Yeah.
So how can people engage with you?
So people, if they're intrigued, could check out the book Seven Cups of Consciousness. It's on Amazon, New World Library, Barnes and Noble. And then they could also go to sevencupsofconsciousness.com and get a free month of the daily cups and a tall cup. And I also have tons of YouTube video clips. And so you could subscribe to my YouTube channel, and we post 2 to 3 new YouTubes with little energetic processes and sharing concepts and ponder this 2 to 3 a week. And so those would be the first 3 places that people could start exploring. And then the Seven Cups of Consciousness site is a little smaller, a little more manageable, whereas AleyaDao.com, which is where I house everything. There's like 3,000 meditations, 250 tall cup sessions, um, empathic sensitivity master course, lots of master courses that people can dive into if you're the avid student and you really want to learn how to work with your energetic fields.
Amazing. Amazing. I will have Noah put all of that in the show notes.
Great.
This time flew by. Like when you talk about energy and like, there is no time continuum, it's not right.
Right?
Literally, I feel like this was like 20 seconds, which is kind of how
Well,
I felt when I was on your podcast.
I know, it's so great. A kindred spirit, and you are so wise and kind and gracious, Abby. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Oh my gosh, my pleasure. And check out Aleya's podcast as well, Tips of Consciousness.